What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Nolecast, and we are back to our weekly off-season schedule. Probably about a 40-minute show today for you if I can. And got a couple questions from our Patreon, patreon.com/Nolecast. We always appreciate everybody supporting the show, and you guys do an awesome job. Got the Mike Norvell speaking tour kicking off. He's coming here to Orlando pretty quickly, so that'll be kind of cool to go and check out if you guys are going to that. And we got some questions rolling in. We got some interviews going on over at the Moore Center for the newcomers. And let's get into this. So kick it off with a question and kind of have a main topic I want to discuss, and then a couple more offshoots of that question. The first one here is the Castellanos interview, because they made them available recently to the media, and early feedback from the program make you less worried about Castellanos. It's a good question. I appreciate John asking it. So obviously there was some worry about Castellanos, who some of the narrative out there is that he kind of just quit on Boston College when he got benched. And obviously there was some injury stuff, I think, that played into that. Was it totally his fault he got benched? I don't know. I think he was kind of dinged up, and the quality of play for a game or two had certainly dropped off. And I don't necessarily want to relitigate all that. But the feedback so far has been good on Castellanos. Not amazing. Not they think that they struck gold and have some hidden gem here. Not they're going to have some awesome or really good offense. But the guys I talked to do expect an improved offense under Castellanos, and I think it is fair to say that he had a real involvement with recruiting some of the players on offense to Tallahassee. So it's at least good that he's bought in terms of wanting to surround himself with talent. Does that mean that he's going to, play super well? No, but I guess what's the counterfactual here? A guy who only cares about the check that he's getting from NIL and doesn't really care about surrounding him with talent. I don't think that's something that is likely to happen necessarily, at least not very often. But it is something worth checking out, I guess. So I don't think that Castellanos is going to be a problem. But again, it's easy to say all the right things in an interview. It's easy to make a good impression when you first get to a new place. I mean, you could also make a bad one, certainly. But when the chips are down, what if his throwing woes continue, right? Like he's never been a really good passer. If this team doesn't get stops defensively, or if the run game is not as good as they hope, I've never seen that situation before, with the exception of last year. Then what do you have? So I don't know. I guess we will see. But yeah, I would say I'm slightly encouraged so far by what he's saying. And I got to say, and I said this on Cover 3 the other day, and I would expand upon it here. I think that given the market for quarterbacks this offseason, FSU probably did, I would say, like a good to very good job, given what some of these kids cost, given where you are in like the win big, win now, rebound cycle, who you have that you're throwing to, etc. This was not a great transfer portal in terms of top-end receivers, but you were able to go out and get some guys who you think are unique pieces and fits for your offense. Deuce Robinson, and of course Squirrel White, if he can retain or kind of regain his form rather that he had once upon a time, and you're not getting the slowed down injured version of him, which again we'll kind of have to see. So that's kind of the main thing I wanted to talk today. Is this report by David Hale and Andrew Adelson, as well as Ross Dellinger. I've heard some things on the FSU end on this about ESPN deciding to pick up its option, which renews the ACC grant of rights and television contract through 2036. This is really not a surprise that they would choose to renew. FSU and Clemson actively suing to get out of the league. That the reporting indicates that there will likely be some sort of settlement there between the schools and the ACC, which will keep FSU in the conference, certainly by the contract for the next decade. But also an interesting line in some of this reporting that I noticed, and if you guys want to, you should go read it as well. I think it's a really nice job that they did. Is that FSU and Clemson are pushing for reduced penalty fee, penalty structure for breaking the grant of rights after the 2031 season. Now, why is that? Why would 2031 be the magic number? That's the year that everybody projects the Big Ten and the SEC to be somewhat open for business, right? I think that is a fascinating line in there. Now, there's no guarantee they'll get it, but that would be something that I think if you're an FSU fan, you could say, okay, there was a lot of bluster about this lawsuit. Part of this is posturing and positioning. But if you come away with like nothing here, you look like idiots. And I don't think they're going to come away with nothing. But again, you have to kind of see what they're going to get. If they do get severely reduced structure to leave the league in 2031, paired with, by the way, the other important thing in here, which is sort of the brand initiative incentives pool that I think that they are discussing, then maybe you have something. And the devil will be in the details of this deal. But if the top 2 or top 3 teams in the league are able to make somewhat close to SEC money, then I think, or Big Ten money, like in the ballpark, maybe within 5 million, maybe within 8 million, then that's pretty huge. If you're making close to that and you're getting to play an ACC schedule, which is really weak in comparison, let's call back to last week when we talked the FSU schedule and people were kind of nitpicking some of the difficulties of it. I said, well, I mean, like to me, this is not even a top 20 schedule in college football. Like go look at what some of these Big Ten teams play, or go look at what Florida has to play, this year, or Oklahoma or whomever. If you're getting close to SEC or Big Ten money, which I would project FSU would because it's TV ratings, even when the Noles suck as they did this year, if you're getting close to that kind of money based on your brand value to the league, which is a lot more stable than your win-loss record, although they're certainly related, and you get to play that ACC schedule, I think you have to feel pretty good about where you are for the next 5 years. You would love to get out now and actually play interesting games on a weekly basis and not play, teams that, and this is not meant for me to disrespect teams like this, because I like watching college football just in general. But a lot of fans don't want to watch games against like Pitt and Cuse or NC State, just brands that are not commonly held up by the media as top brands, because they're not. They're good brands, but they're just not maybe in like the top third or top 40% of the sport. And I think they're jealous sometimes of their SEC friends or Big Ten friends who are playing big-time games on a much more frequent basis, which is interesting because another line in this reporting, I believe this is in ESPN, is that Notre Dame is going to play far more games now against Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, which is great for Notre Dame because obviously those are the teams that are going to give big-time TV ratings. Those are the teams that are going to actually sell big tickets when they come to your stadium, pretty much regardless of record, by the way. Like Florida State Notre Dame is going to sell every time you play it. Clemson Notre Dame is going to sell. Miami Notre Dame is going to sell. And also an attempt maybe to have the top teams in the league play each other more. So I can't spend this as a win yet for the Noles because I don't know what exactly it will look like. If the top team in this league is making $20 million less in 2029 or 2028 than the top team in the SEC, it's still better than like what they otherwise would have had, but it doesn't feel like a win or a satisfactory settlement to me. If you're like 5 or 10 million off, I think that's probably where I would draw the line of success. And then it's up to you, of course, to get out there and win some ball games, So I would feel fairly good about that. Another question I would have here in looking at this, well, a couple more, actually. I've got quite a few. I do want to first shout out Chad, 844-FSU loan, 844-FSU loan is the number to call if you want to get a home loan. I've done it twice. Chad does a great job on all things loans. The legendary team is fantastic. 844-FSU loan is the number to call. So give Chad a call. 600 Nolecast listeners. Can they be wrong? I guess it's an advertisement. Got it technically sure, but I mean, we don't get negative feedback on those guys. It's been fantastic. So 844-FSU loan is the number to call. Maybe some rates going down soon. So be on top of that. Where's the money coming from? Is ESPN ponying up more money because the conference is agreeing to make sure that we have more marquee games in the pairing, a little bit less FSU Wake and a little more? Well, FSU already plays Clemson and Miami every year, but maybe a little more Miami Clemson, maybe a little more Miami Louisville, maybe a little more FSU SMU, that type of thing. Maybe Carolina plays those teams a little more often. Obviously, the additional games against the Irish. Where is the extra money coming from to placate the top teams that actually make not all the money, but a large majority of the money for this conference? I think that's a fascinating question here that you have to think about. Now, maybe some come from ESPN, although there's been no reporting that ESPN has agreed to kick in more. And I don't know really why they would. They have a great deal on the ACC. It is a bargain deal for this league, for ESPN. Now, on the other hand, does this mean that some of those other teams are agreeing to take less? If so, then I think some of the folks out there who are going to criticize FSU for how blustery they were with this lawsuit, and I don't disagree with them. They were blustery, okay? I think, as we said, some of that's posturing. The devil will be in the details. But you also had guys who were just just completely unwilling at certain schools, Wake Forest, schools like that, at the time, just unwilling to consider taking a smaller cut to give to the teams that really drive that revenue. And we said it here on this very show many times. I sat here with Graham and said it. Look, man, they probably aren't suing if the league would give them somewhat of a fair deal. You have an extremely top-heavy earning structure. It's not really a meritocracy as currently comprised, but it kind of needs to be if you want to keep this league together for any length of time. Wake Forest can talk about how they're the fastest growing brand. Well, cool. We'll all be dead by the time they catch FSU in terms of media value. Like, fastest growing still will take another 100 years and will probably never, ever get there, right? Boston College, Pitt, Syracuse, like schools like that there's some good programs, some proud fan bases, but they don't resonate nationally. And this is a national and especially a regional brand, the ACC. There are a couple schools who really drive the value of this league from a TV standpoint. And this is a TV game now. It is a business that is TV revenue generating. Tickets matter too, but that you keep your own ticket gate, obviously. Are these schools now coming around and saying, yeah, you're right. Like, shoot, okay, we're Pitt or we're Cuse or we're Boston College, probably good examples. I don't know that BC would have an invite to the Big 12 if this league blew up tomorrow. Are they saying, shoot, like it's better for us to take an X% cut, be that 10 or 20 or whatever, to our revenue share than it is to try to go out and fend for ourselves in the Big East? Because I can pretty much guarantee you the economics of this are that the haircut that these small schools agree to take is still less than the absolute head shaving or scalping that they would take if they had to drop down to the G5, like materially so. And I am curious to see the treatment in some of the media out there of this. Like, if the details come out and they're like, wait a second, so now you guys criticized FSU for suing because you would not play ball or even be willing to discuss the things they wanted to discuss in terms of who is driving the value. And Clemson too, and I know Miami never sued, but certainly they're somewhat in this boat. So they sued because you guys wouldn't agree to this. Now you are agreeing to this, and they're still the bad guy, when if y'all had just used some common sense in the first place, they basically called FSU's bluff and Clemson's bluff, and then Clemson and FSU were like, all right, watch this. You may think our legal arguments suck, but some of these judges in our state don't. And we'll see how that plays out for you, right? Uncertainty is not great if you're trying to do long-term business planning. Speaking of business planning, if you're not using Matt Lewis at Congruity, I think you're missing out. Matt does an awesome job optimizing your business. Check him out. Link in the show notes. Hit him up on the email. We have like 10 Nolecast businesses now who've decided to use Matt. And as far as I know, they could not be happier. We've never gotten negative feedback on Matt ever and have worked with him for a number of years. Payroll, HR solutions, business optimization, analytics. Now they're in the healthcare game as well. there's a lot of stuff you got to manage as a small business for sure. And we know about it. And Matt does an awesome job for us. I think businesses that are even bigger than us certainly really could benefit as well. So if you're kind of in that 10 person to 200 person range, absolutely hit them up in terms of number of employees. Matt Lewis at Congruity, a proud sponsor of the Nolecast. So yeah, we'll be anxiously waiting the details to see a couple questions here. One, how big is the haircut the schools on the bottom end? How big is that haircut that they took? Two, how many schools will be paid out at the top? And three, how many schools who are paid out at the top of this brand incentive structure are paid out on more than just a nominal basis? So let's say it's just the top 2 schools that get paid out something. Are you going to get votes in the room to do that? I would think probably not. What if it's the top 3? Maybe you're cooking with gas there. What if it's 4, but the 4th spot doesn't really make hardly anything at all? I don't know. That's something there that will be interesting to see. Does everybody have to agree to take a certain percentage cut, or is it just, hey, if your ratings that year sucked, maybe you take a larger cut and we make it retroactive? Again, I think for planning purposes, you really can't do what I just said there. You probably have to agree, based on some kind of formula you would want to use, whether that is the ACC's formula or the formula set forth by the attorneys for Florida State and Clemson as far as ratings, brand value, impact, all that kind of stuff. You probably need to take some kind of multi-year look back window to determine the kind of haircut you're going to take each year. Just my opinion. Again, I don't know what the negotiations are in that room, or even how tied they actually are to FSU dropping the lawsuit with the ACC or ESPN deciding to pick up the option there for the ACC. But for essentially 5 years additional or 6 years additional labor piece, certainly not a crazy price to pay if you're Wake Forest, if you're Boston College, that type of stuff, because what's your alternative? I don't know where some of these schools would go. I could certainly see Brett Yormark trying to scoop up Pittsburgh and Syracuse and maybe Louisville to expand the Big 12 footprint a little bit more to the east, but they already have Cincinnati. How much do they really need Louisville? They kind of just need Cincinnati not to suck at football and basketball. Cuse for the Big 12 would make a ton of sense because Yormark's New York connections. And didn't he already try to move the Big 12 tournament to New York one time? So, probably not something he would pass up on there. Pittsburgh would give West Virginia a dancing partner in their own time zone in a league that is often wrought with difficult travel. So to me, that's something you have to be watching for here. How much did the dissolution of the Pac-12 play on the minds of these ADs? Syracuse AD mentioned this recently. I know we had heard some other schools are pretty closely watching just how quickly it unraveled. For instance, Wake Forest stole Washington State's head coach. That's crazy, right? 3 years ago, Washington State was a better program than Wake Forest. And now Washington State is having to take 22 transfers from the FCS level. I don't think Wake has a place to go if the ACC were to disband. Duke probably finds a home because of the basketball, but is the football good enough recently, or does the basketball carry them enough to where some network would say, okay, yeah? Which brings up another question here for me. In this brand incentive program that they're going to have, how much does basketball matter and how much does football matter? I assume it's going to be separate pools. It would almost have to be. But also, what if it's not? What if some school comes in 5th in basketball and 5th in football? That's not necessarily qualifying for any additional money if you only had a football pool and you only had a basketball pool. But what about some kind of combo pool? Again, I don't know how they're going to do this, but those are questions I'm asking if I'm, let's say, Louisville, right? It's very conceivable to me that Louisville could be the 5th most watched football and 5th most watched basketball school, which is pretty valuable. And if you did the combined ratings, would probably be pretty solid. I don't know how their basketball is this year, actually, but traditionally the Cards have a good basketball team and are generally they won a national title, all that kind of stuff, I believe, right? Didn't Pitino win one there? I think, or at least they've played extremely well. I probably shouldn't talk basketball when I don't know a damn thing about basketball. Here's another question for you. You might not have considered with the extension, the option being picked up by the ESPN, and with the potential settlement looming for FSU and Clemson. If you're going to play more games, between the marquee teams to ensure that ESPN gets the ratings it wants? How are you going to do conference tiebreakers? Because you could tell me just it doesn't matter. Everybody's schedule is going to come around eventually and become hard or easy, and then it'll be easy or hard. But that's not true if you are always lining up your top teams to play one another. There are certainly scenarios in which a team plays the top 5 teams in the league and they go like 3-2, and maybe another team plays none of the top 5 teams in the league and they only have one conference loss. Are they going to use some kind of formula? Because like if you're always doing it, the easy schedule never comes around to you. And this is not like bitching. I'm just literally curious here, because if you don't account for this now, you're also going to run into the problem of, are your conference championship games going to suck? Are we going to have a situation where it's very obvious that the best or second best team did not make the conference championship game because the schedule was crazy hard, and you're consistently facing the third or fourth best team in the league because that team had a far more favorable schedule? I mean, if I'm Jim Phillips, I'm trying to think ahead on this a little bit and saying, okay, maybe we have some kind of standings formula or something. I don't know. Certainly to resolve tiebreakers, I think you need to really factor in conference strength of schedule when the tie being broken is between 2 conference teams for a chance to go play in the conference title game. I think that's pretty much it on that. I do want to tell you about Charlie Park Rooftop. Charlie Park is an awesome spot. Lunch, dinner, drinks, special events from the Madso Township For the Table Restaurant Group family. Matt Thompson and that group, a proud sponsor of the Nolecast for, what are we, like a decade now? Just an awesome experience every time you go. Like they do it right, okay? And you know, restaurants don't last in college towns that long if they're not doing something right. And those guys continue to crush and do a great job. So Charlie Park Rooftop, especially with graduation coming up, want to reserve your spot for your son or daughter. Congrats to them, obviously, if they're graduating from FSU. All right, so explain 2031. How embarrassing is this? We don't know. Pac-12, how did you decide a conference? The Leonard Hamilton situation, I will talk about briefly because I don't have a lot of details on this. Obviously, he announced that he is going to be done at the end of the year. I think FSU will have some FSU-connected suitors for the job. But again, like how much NIL is seriously being allocated to FSU basketball right now? Is FSU a school that can truly afford to be good at 3 sports? And if so, is basketball more important than football? No. Is it more important than baseball? I would argue probably not, because I don't think it matters like how damn good you are at basketball. You're still never going to be able to play in that pool, right? That would get the extra brand money, I don't believe, for the basketball pool. So I think some schools will probably devote a lot of money towards basketball to try to, be good at that. And maybe not punt football, but kind of punt football. FSU can't punt football. FSU has to be all in on football. Basketball is probably the third program, or maybe like, tied with baseball as the second program. And there are not many schools that can say like baseball is more important than hoops. But I think in some cases here, it can be argued that it actually is. I mean, there are probably some Southern schools that would say that. Maybe Ole Miss. Not Arkansas now with Calipari. So something to consider there. Final one here. I was talking to a buddy the other day, and this was on the show. So Danny Cannell. He was talking about like what will FSU's win total be, and FSU is not a team listed on the preseason win totals so far on FanDuel or DraftKings, or I don't think anybody else really has these up so far. I will check, but I don't think they do. Let me just check here real fast. Going through, looking at some different spots. NCAA futures. No. We got nine special bets on Bill Belichick now. That's kind of cool. Caesars. Pull this up here if I can. All right, the back door into Caesars still works. No, they only have North Carolina. Okay. So we only have 3 ACC teams that even have preseason win odds listed anywhere. But we do have the conference odds as well, which I think we can use to kind of extrapolate along with some of the other odds that are posted. Like we have a Florida win total, we have an Alabama win total, which matters quite a bit, and we have a Notre Dame win total. So I went and played with this using sort of like market-based power ratings to see what Vegas will probably hang for the Noles. So Clemson is the league favorite, plus 270 on FanDuel. I looked at this, and so their win total is effectively 9.5 juice under. I calculated that at 9.1 wins. So you look at this, it's basically 6.4 conference wins for Clemson, I think. And then like 2.7 non-con wins because they do play LSU and they also play South Carolina. Miami is the next biggest favorite, plus 310 for the league. So fairly close to what Clemson is, but theirs is going to be lower. So I looked at it here and extrapolating from like the best, and I'm guessing in some of these power ratings, but luckily you can plug in like zeros for some teams because you're probably not losing to an FCS team. For Miami, I came up with 6 conference wins and 2.8 non-conference wins to get you to 8.8. North Carolina is the other data point we have. Obviously, it's heavily influenced by public opinion here with all the people wanting to bet on Oregon's Belichick and the fact that it's become like very popular here, even though almost nobody bets these win totals this early. It's fun to kind of throw some money at the Belichick prop. So with that said, Carolina is posted at 7.5, basically even juice, so I didn't have to extrapolate that at all. You know, whereas like Miami, you had to kind of shade down. Clemson, you had to kind of shade down for 9-1 and 8-8 for those two respectively. But with UNC, it's 7.5, pretty much juice even. So I looked at this, and I think their schedule is real easy within the league, like much easier than FSU's. So I got 2.75 non-con and 4.75 conference. So looking at all this, trying to base these power ratings out, I actually have some interesting stuff here. I got FSU at 7.3 wins, which is like 7.5 juice, like minus 45 to the under, right? So kind of a 7-5, 8-4 season, most likely being projected by Vegas, which is a big jump, obviously, if you went 2-10 the prior year. Same number of wins as UNC in conference play, which is 4.75, but 2.5 being the non-conference number. Obviously, you do play Alabama, and you have to go play in the swamp. So if you win one of those, you're feeling really, really good. But your other 2 non-conference games are essentially locks as wins with Kent State and then East Texas A&M, which used to be Texas A&M Commerce, by the way. Appreciate everybody reaching out from the last episode to let me know about that. I don't know. Let me know how you would feel about a win total 7.5 for the Noles, juiced under, or 7 juice over, which I think is probably what you're more likely to see. But a lot of places don't really want to hold your money for that long just to give you a push. So for the most part, you're going to get a half win on these because they would like to be able to make a decision and not have a tie, push at the end. That's pretty much all I have for this week. No real serious movement for FSU in the transfer portal ratings. Obviously, Deuce Robinson went up a little bit. FSU looks to have a nice transfer class. The more I look at this, the more I'm like, man, I know they could have used a lot of help, but I'm so glad you're not in a situation like an Auburn where it's shoot, your all-in transfer portal year was this year. And I just don't think the talent this year is that great, which I think is good for the sport, by the way, that we're seeing more of these teams in that 15 to 50 range of job quality find a way with the advent of the house settlement money or the expected house settlement money to keep their players. I don't know a person, I don't know a real college football fan who follows it, who is adamantly against players getting paid. I think that they are against the nonstop transferring, which makes it to where you want to buy a player's jersey. Not if you're man, the kid might not be on my team in 3 months. That kind of stuff, that sucks, and that hurts fandom. That hurts your ability to establish that true kind of deep connection with your team. We all had certain players that we grew up loving, whether it's Peter Warrick or Darrell Bush or whomever, right? Wadsworth, guys who would be on your roster for a while. That's my worry about the damage being done to the sport is, can you establish a connection with your favorite players on your team and have them be on your team for a couple years? I don't think anybody's like, man, I can't enjoy this player because he's being compensated. You still love Bobby Bowden when he was the highest or one of the highest paid coaches in the sport, right? Nobody disliked him for that. So, yeah, that's what I got this week. Things are going fairly well in Tallahassee, I think, with some of the rebuild stuff. I am curious to see how this all will go. But another episode next week, and maybe a guest. I don't know. I think it could be kind of fun. So stay tuned, like, subscribe, make sure you share with your friends. Take care, y'all.